session. So a very welcome to everyone. Good afternoon. So the theme for this session is Identity 2025, examining future models of authentication and authorization. I would now like to invite our speakers on the stage, Mr. Siddharth Gandhi, COO, APAC One Cosmos. Welcome, sir. Dr. Jagannath Sahu, CISO, Gujarat Fluorochemicals. Mr. Srihari Kotni, Senior Director, CISO, Pine Labs. Professor Arunabha Mukhopadhyay, sir, Professor IIM Lucknow. And last but not the least, I would like to welcome Mr. Deepak Raut. Deepak sir will be moderating the session today. Welcome, sirs, and a very warm welcome to all the audience here. Over to you, Deepak sir.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we are all running late. We'll try to keep this session to time. This is happens to be a passion subject to all of us here. There was a time when identity was a directory. We all know that time, right? When the network was not connected. Azure AD or any other LDAP did the job. So how many in the audience are kind of security folks? Can I have some hands up in the room, please? Everybody? Okay. How many have handled identity in their life? Okay. So I just want to quickly see that. Identity was an orphan child for most of my security life. Security guys never touched it because it was always broken. It was expensive, it didn't work, right? And it never covered a significant part of the enterprise. So security was very content with endpoint, network, and SecOps. But I think when cloud broke through, we realized that without identity, nothing happened, right? Nothing happened well. And this big buzzword of zero trust came and tortured us further. So today we are going to handle the topic of identity and access management, the whole gamut of it, futuristic looking. We'll not go back to the days of when we had nice sounding three-letter names causing us a lot of pain. I don't want to call out any product name. But we have gone through those pains, right? Each implementation costed hundreds of thousands of dollars and achieved only one application integration. We are looking at new age identity, which solves problems for all user groups, enterprise users, partners, customers, and we also have the government space as well. Fantastic things are happening from government. They're leading the charge. We'll not cover that space, but we can see what we can learn from there. So B2E, B2B, B2C, and the government to consumer or government to citizen, G2C area, we can talk about all that. We have two CISOs here. They'll bring the enterprise perspective. We have one person from the industry OEM space. He'll bring out the product perspective, and we have a professor who will give the research and academia perspective. So with that, I'll start some questions. We'll keep about 10 minutes reserved in the end for questions. So hold your thoughts and keep your notes ready, and we'll try to answer your questions. So the first question is to my CISO friends here, Srihari and Jagannath. Where has identity reached in enterprises? What are the key challenges today that are unsolved by technology available, which is causing you pain points? And where do you see our opportunities for giving or getting a better service in the future in identity?
Right. Thank you, Deepak. The question will be very, very difficult question. And, then many of the CISOs will have their minds actually boggling, right? So identity is the center of any access, right? In order to protect your data, applications, networks, and all. It is actually, you can't access anything unless, you have an authentication or you have some identity. It can be anywhere, right? Not only enterprise and outside. you can't enter into a, I mean, even to access your own funds in a bank, it's everywhere it's identity, right? Your signature, yourself, I mean, your biological, like your face, whatever it is, right? I mean, basically, we know each other actually with identity, right? So, in the enterprise, right? So, if I keep it simple, right? So, the technologies are there, right? We have, I mean, the industry has been evolving technologies to have a good authentication, right? We have the old days system, actually, there was a username, password, then you have a two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, you have federated authentication, etc., right? But still, the fundamentally, most of the breaches happens because of a kind of compromise of the identities, right? Just there was a ransomware related topic. So in the ransomware, many people actually, like people don't hack, they actually log in, right? So here in the enterprise is a concern, right? Even you have, today we are in the situation that even you have a 2FA, you have multiple 2FAs actually, running in the organization, right? So the users are actually having multiple identities within the same organization, because one for the, for privileged access, one for normal access, etc. Then people have the burden of carrying certain service accounts, etc., also with their ownership, right? So there's a lot of burden of, remembering the usernames, passwords, etc., with each person. And one moment of compromise, or somewhere actually the leakage that are guessing, will actually expose our entire organization, right? Second thing is about the how do we manage the identities of partners. For a partner, he don't care about your access management. You will be made accountable or responsible for your username, password within the organization. But the moment you become the a kind of service provider, or the like you extend some kind of authentication for your partners. Partners really don't uh, take those username, authentication credentials at the same seriousness, as one use it in their organization. So then they will forget the password, or they'll compromise, they will share the password, etc., right? And obviously, you have the challenges of the length, age, etc. People will use the same username actually somewhere in social media that can get compromised, etc., right? So the the entire problem of, most of the problems, like 60-70% or 80% of the problems are actually about how the identities are managed within the organization, within the enterprise.
Yeah, a couple of things I'll cover. What Sriyari started. Identity started with password, right? Password, small character. Then we started with long character, alphanumeric, all these things. Then 2FA got added. 2FA means identity, password plus some certificate. Again, MFA got added. Then CAPTCHA got added now. CAPTCHA also people are able to break. During COVID time, vaccination time, people was able to break CAPTCHA and book their vaccine fast. After capture, numeric capture, then now picture capture came. Now biometric. In biometric also a lot of revolution is there. Either thumb or palm or now retina. So slowly it is moving from password to passwordless. Every organization, social networking portals, they are moving to passwordless. Password QR code. Even if nowadays airport, while entering to airport, DG pass or that pass, everything is going from password to passwordless, more on digital front. And there are a lot of AI-enabled things happening also. This slowly, it is going to passwordless and more on biometrics. Okay. This is moving towards like this. And you must have seen after COVID era, a lot of change happened. Suddenly, what change happened? The home become the new data center now. Home become the new office. Cloud become new data center. And for IT guys, zero trust is the only trust. This happened. So there is a lot of revolution is happening. Now we are discussing 2025. So it is more going towards the passwordless and more on biometrics. This is moving towards like this.
Okay. So that was to lay a landscape of enterprise identities and the practices today. I also wanted to hear about challenges. I didn't hear much, but let's talk about from the industry, from the OEM perspective. Siddharth, question to you is, Um, what is identity to you? What does identity mean to you? Here we mostly spoke of identity as credentials of people, right? How do you see identity from the OEM space, and what are some capability challenges in the identity space that you think there is opportunity for new players to step into? That said, just to lay the ground on what all identity covers, it covers the life cycle of people from the time they exist for us as an entity to the time they exit us. And so it incorporates inventorying them, provisioning them, deprovisioning them, changing them, reporting on them, and auditing them. It's a whole lot of activities. Typically, people like Gartner, etc., have put into multiple quadrants in their magic quadrant capturing, because no one space captures all of the identity lifecycle. They'll have a directory space, they'll have a authentication authorization space, they have a governance and auditing space, web access space, and there have been plenty of products in that space, yet identity has remained a problem. So Siddharth is coming from the product space. Question to you is, what are opportunities and what are the challenges?
Sure. So I think in the last 7-8 minutes, we've heard a couple of things around what identity means, and I think all of us are at fault, right? I don't think I can say that the industry or the enterprises are at fault. A lot of times OEMs sell it in a way that is very feature-oriented, right? So if you've heard in the last 7-8 minutes, we've spoken about identity being a user ID and a password, right? But if I had to ask any person over here, what is your identity? Nobody's going to say my identity is Siddharth.Gandhi and my password is XYZ, right? It really sounds like a futuristic sci-fi movie where we are walking around like robots, right? So that's not the case. But the challenge is where we are coming from, right? Why are we thinking this way? And that's the need of the hour, is what we believe, is to redefine what identity really means to the industry and the world. Passwords have been around for 60 years, right? That's how we think about it, and it's a habit, and habit is very difficult to break, right? You cannot think beyond it, because that is how you know your universe. The idea is that we need to move beyond it. All of our identities are very unique. We are all very unique individuals. And that is, I think, that is what we need to start thinking about, that what is actual identity, and can I correlate my digital identity to my real world identity in terms of who I am, right? So move away from a world that exists today of what I know or what I have to who you are, right? And I think that, to me, today is the biggest challenge, because over the last few years, we've spent a significant amount of time selling less and teaching or preaching more on how to think differently about identity.
Quickly, about which areas of the identity lifecycle do you think there is opportunity for new people to fill in terms of capabilities?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to give away my secret sauce, but that's fine, right? But so if you think about identity and access management, right? Identity and access management has been around for the last 2 decades. Right, what started off at the cusp of the growth of IAM as a vertical under security started with SOX, or Sarbanes-Oxley's, in the US, where you have a periodic audit and you need the governance in place, right? And that's where the whole identity lifecycle management, who needs access to what and why, came into play, right? And today, where we are, if you think about all the players that are there in the identity space, be it the governance, identity lifecycle, single sign-on, PIM-PAM, etc., there is no identity. So IAM does not have any identity. Why? Because the life cycle of a user really starts by creation of a digital identity. And it goes back to having a username and a password. So for new players, including ourselves, the space that is there is probably, I like to call it pre-IAM world, right? Is bringing in a verified identity play. So you verify the identity of an individual, and you use that verified identity to authenticate. And that's where passwordless, and I had a session in the morning which I spoke about, and the topic was that passwordless is just a feature, right? So the ask is for all the new places to think a little bit differently about how you treat and manage identity.
Okay. I still have some lingering thoughts about unmet needs in enterprise, and I'll dig the CISOs a little later. But I'll go to Professor Arunava for a question on what's happening in the academia and research space. So you have been in the IT risk management for a very, very long time. So specific to identity access management, where do you see new technological capabilities coming, research opportunities coming, and real-world applications of it that you can think of?
Okay. That's a very interesting question. So, well, when you're doing authentication and an authorization, so then what happens is that there's a huge amount of data which is getting collected, right? So either you put in your password or you put in your biometric way of authenticating yourself or your retina. There's a huge amount of data which is getting captured, right? So we were just talking about, Siddharth was talking about 27,000 customers of a particular entity, or say, for example, any organization which has multiple locations in which they're operating out of multiple countries, and they've got huge amount of customers, partners, suppliers involved. So all of them trying to log in very fast and trying to get the access to the value chain that they want to be part of, right? So that means there's a lot of data which is getting accumulated as things go along, right? So now if you have this data in place, and we're talking about password-less sort of a scenario in the future, then can we capitalize on the AI-based technologies that we have in hand, and there is a data which is there, combine them together and create some very interesting models so that we know exactly that when somebody is trying to access a particular system, whether he or she is the right person to have those privileges or roles to him or her, it should be associated or not, right? So currently, as we all understand, mostly it's your HR based roles that you have that gets assigned to you in terms of your privileges, right? But why should you do that? So suppose I have a particular project in which I'm working in, and there is another person who is also working in that project, but we could be belonging to two different divisions or two different locations as well, right? But we need access to the same set of, say, for example, the EC2 cloud and the buckets, S3 buckets, etc. So why can't I, from the data, figure out that if Mr. X, Y, Z and Miss ABC are working on this project, these are the various types of applications and resources that they should have access to. Based on that, so if this is the ask that you have, then from the data that I have accumulated in my database, I can create some very interesting clusters, and from that clusters, I can actually understand that these are the softwares or these are the infrastructure that he or she should require. So I can automatically provision them outright on day one. I don't have to wait for 7 days of figuring out whether or not these roles should be associated with them. So if you look at it from a business point of view, there's a huge saving because you have actually provisioned it outright and you're giving it based on the requirements of the project. That's number one. Number two, if you do look at that data set that you have and you do a quick visualization, you might find some outliers coming in, right? So maybe a particular gentleman or a lady required additional resources because they had a different activity to do in that project, right? Or you can also cross-verify and figure out that whether or not those outliers are at all required or not. We were just talking about zero trust, and as you all know, Microsoft and others are all talking about least amount of privileges to be granted, right? So that's what they talk about. So if I can cut down those outliers based on the data that I have, then I can make my system more secure. Deepak started off the discussion by saying that when you talk about identity management, you keep the security part out of it and you look at it as a functionality. But here you can clearly see that identity management can be a very important stepping stone for security per se, right? So that's where we can look at it. So this is creating graphs and creating clusters by which we can figure out what is required and what is not required. And the other one that we can do is that there's another interesting way which we can do is that based on the data that you have accumulated, you can create some interesting deep learning tools which can figure out that what is the actual requirement of a particular project or a particular skill set, right? Now, say for example, the AI model or the deep learning model learns it. And then when you have a test case scenario, it gets it wrong, right? So as in, like for example, if this gentleman was supposed to be given one privilege and is not associating that privilege, so you can obviously attach that privilege and obviously the project can go on, right? Yeah, you have spent or lost a few amount of hours or minutes or second. But on the contrary, if it is able to figure out very clearly that these are the people who don't need access to these systems and it doesn't provide it out, so that means that algorithm is working correctly and working to the favor of the organization. Right? So this is how we can use a lot of these data that we generate when we do this IAM transactions, which can lead us to very interesting sort of algorithms, and these algorithms can be used to actually be leverage in the realm of security. And then we can have scenarios, because sometimes it so happens that I have left the project for 7 days and still have those accesses, and somebody somewhere is using those accesses to the fullest and trying to make a data breach into the organization. Right? So IAM being a functionality can actually lead to a security problem. So this is where we could probably cut down on some of the features of, or we could actually build a more secure or a zero trust sort of a environment in an organization.
Excellent. So I think there's work for the product community to look at such approaches, as also enterprise leaders to take this into their, perhaps security operations framework, the UEBA space, and incorporate AI into that space to have more predictive analytics about identity. So stepping into zero trust, how are we doing as a panel? Are you guys still awake or sleeping? Okay, so we have an audience poll question to wake you up, okay? So there is some prize, mystery prize for it. I don't know how much it is, but it's a big amount. Okay, I'll renege on my promises after the session, of course. So
I'll make it easy for you. Why don't you come to booth number 37 and try passwordless? We have AirPods and Apple Watch to give away.
All right. There's an Apple Watch for prize, okay? So I'll take that on that. So the question is, what are the 3 legs or 3 pillars of zero trust? The big buzz zero trust. We are going to bust some of them right now. But different people look at this elephant from a different perspective. Let me give you a little bit of history of zero trust. It comes from a very old protocol called Zero Knowledge Identification Protocol. In 1999, I did a thesis on this topic while I was in the army. So Zero Knowledge Identification Protocol says that there is this Alice and Bob. Bob is in the front of a cave, the Open Sesame cave, where the password is Open Sesame, and Alice comes and says, "Hey Bob, let me in." Bob says, "Do you have the secret?" She says, "Open Sesame," and the door opens and Alice goes inside. Okay. So this is a bad example of Zero Knowledge Identification Protocol, where the intended objective of Alice going to the cave is achieved, but the secret is leaked out. The secret is Open Sesame. Zero Knowledge Protocol says that you do the transaction and knowledge does not leak out. Okay? Knowledge should stay resident. So with this as the background, and with whatever you have heard about zero trust, and a typical word goes connected after zero trust, you would have heard that very clearly. If you do a Google search, you will find that term coming together. What are the 3 pillars of zero trust? Any first 3 people can compete for the Apple Watch. Anyone? Of course, so identity is one. So very smart. We are in identity session. So it's 1 pillar. Sorry? Device. Okay, cool. The 3rd one. Yes? Security, all of it is security. It's an enterprise security domain. Go on, somebody. So identity, device, and?
Authenticity.
Authentication is part of identity? Access is part of, so access, authentication, all is part of identity, of course. So identity, device, and the big elephant called network, okay? So if you do zero trust, you will find zero trust networking come on the top. A lot of dishonesty has gone into making zero trust networking the term for zero knowledge protocol. So network is a carrier of signals, right? And network doesn't, and today there's no network, right? Our network is wherever we are loafing around to. So the core of zero trust is identity, which was supposed to be the core of the protocol anyways in the beginning. And we are coming back to the world only after our dream was punctured by COVID. We have to deal with this dispersed enterprise where anybody from anywhere wants to be productive with any device. to access any resource in the company. So device is not a constraint, and network is not a constraint. Application is not a constraint. The only constraint is identity, and as Siddharth put in well in the blog, we are assigning the identity to something which the person is not, which is its digital counterpart. I am not Deepak.Raut. I am Deepak Raut. You see? And it's a very difficult problem to solve in the space of today's threat landscape. And this problem is being solved in some particular manners, in areas where it is easy to solve, authentication, right? And which area to solve? The thing you know. The thing you know can be conveyed through multiple means, MFA. But the thing you are, which is the core of identity, is perhaps the most difficult part of identity to solve. So with coming back to zero trust as the core, CISOs, how much of zero trust is kind of in practice in enterprises, and what challenges you are seeing in implementation of zero trust?
Tell you one thing, before practicing we have to practice the zero trust, and we have to bring it into employee DNA. Till the time every employee contributes, then the zero trust will not happen. So there is a lot of tools we deployed, there are a lot of tools, a lot of resistance also while deploying zero trust tools. But it should be DNA of everybody. Okay, till the time it will not happen. And what he mentioned, we should treat identity for normal user and privileged user differently. That's why you're putting the PAM and PIM solutions. Okay, that's why ultimately it should come to DNA and everybody, because हम लोग जितना भी strong कर दिए, हम 3 locker बना दिए, लेकिन बाहर से गहना रहेगा. मतलब I'm talking about family. We are having 3 lockers, but putting gold ornaments outside, no use. So everybody should contribute to the security. All employees.
Right. Three?
So I will pick up certain areas on, I mean, where is, what is our journey towards, like the topic actually 2025, right? So here actually, even I don't have the solution, but then what I would like to tell you is that people are becoming impatient every day, right? So because I have come from the B2C, for last more than a decade actually, I have been working in the industry and in the organizations which are actually into B2C. So it's something like some principles are there, like winner takes all. And second thing is, if someone cannot access an app within 1 or 2 attempts, or actually within 3 seconds, just they'll switch over to a different app, right? So there is a kind of lot of pressure on CISOs to accept the most easiest authentication, right? Most seamless authentication. And second thing is the password resets, etc. Right? It cannot be too cumbersome as well, right? In this B2C area. And the same fatigue is coming to employees as well. Employees are now becoming impatient in accessing any applications or accessing any enterprise resources. So if you ask them that, username, password, and two-factor authentication, and the next is actually some kind of, let's say, step-up authentication, if you say, right, they become impatient. Today, I'm not just talking about authentication alone. We are talking about zero trust, 3 pillars, right? Network, device, and identity, right? Keeping the identity apart. People wanted access to the resources from internet wherever they are, right? Because people are using mobile phones. They want to do, it can be financial transaction, it can be enterprise, it can be anything. People cannot just open the laptop and connect to the VPN and do the authentication, the application, do the work. They are impatient. All they wanted is a click of button on the mobile phone. The work has to get done, right? And second thing is the devices. They want to work anywhere where they want, right? They don't want to be restricted that they have to open the laptop. Actually, so that's the thing. So in this case, what is the authentication? How do we we are talking about multiple layers of authentication. So earlier I thought of mentioning something. We have technologies, right? People are burdened with, if you take my mobile phone and if you open the Google Authenticator, there will be multiple pages, right? So people cannot carry, so many, right, authentication credentials with them, right? How do we solve it, right? So that's where actually in 2025, the passwords are becoming more and more seamless. We have to use the zero trust principles where, the passwordless authentication, right? You log in, open the mobile app, scratch something or show your face, your authentication should be fine. It is the responsibility of CISO and the IT infrastructure team in case there is a compromise happens, that you have to build such a complexity that authentication is proven, right, beyond any kind of doubt. Second thing is, all the principles of your authentication is also going away, right? Earlier you have to change the password 3 times, right? 6-digit, alphanumeric, special characters, that, this and all, they're all going away. You can remember only one password and you can keep it for your lifetime. Because the more frequently you have to change the password, the more it is getting compromised, right? People write down, people keep the same password, etc. Now the NIST guidelines, now PCI DSS requirement is that it's a 12 characters password, right? There is no, like you don't need to change very often. But actually there is innovations can be done where for the impatient employees, the authentication can be like, streamlined. Third thing actually, which is my favorite topic, that identity or authentication is becoming an asset, right? So how many user IDs you have and all this thing. So identity is not a person now. It's actually asset. How many is possessing, is losing. We can actually say, that you are responsible in case the password is compromised. What happens? Compromise happens. That fellow says, I don't know. You are not secured your thing, right? I use the same password, whatever you have, I have set it, right? So in that case, people have to bring their identity along, right? Maybe there's some work has to be done, like, there are certain countries actually, award in some kind of specific, centralized authentication models and all. People bring in their authentication and the authentication will be mapped there. So authentication is only one time, password verification or identity verification. The access management or a token will be managed with him and to access this. So that is the way I think we will be, moving ahead. Right? That's a quick, update.
Okay. In Zero Trust, we'll see a lot of AI being used, Professor Arunabha. In the use of AI, in all spaces in security, including in identity, as we go forward, what risks you see in terms of algorithmic issues such as biases and other challenges hidden in AI that will trouble identity and security overall?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, because when you're building an AI model, as all of us can appreciate, the building block is data, right? So the data that you're using and you're training the model with becomes the inherent and the most interesting part of it, right? So if I have the data which is having some amount of bias, or if I classify the data with some amount of bias into it, so that can become a very serious issue about the explainability of that model. We were just chatting before the session, and it came out that suppose there is a particular location in India, and you from where people access, and by default it is assumed that it is risky, and you try to blacklist those IP addresses or calls or whichever happens from there. Right? Now, what you have done is that as a individual or as a human being, you have actually classified those data points as risky points, and that has gone into the database, and that data is being pulled out and being used as for the training set. Now, if this, it's being, say for example, 20 to 30% of cases or 10 to 15% cases, yes, that IP address is a problem point, but there could be also chances that there were no problems from that. But if you have over-highlighted that in the training set, then what would happen, as all of us can understand, is that even if a genuine user is trying to log in from that IP address, he might get blocked out, and that could actually lead to a huge revenue loss, reputation loss for the organizations. That could be one issue or a challenge which could come up, right? And also this large learning models that we're all talking about, Gen AI and ChatGPT, etc., they are also adding up to the worries of the CISOs and CTOs, because now you can have very similar looking verbatim type of emails, etc., getting crafted and being sent from the bad guy's side to the organization, and many of the times they might miss it out because they would be looking as similar as possible, as we all know, because these deep fakes are very difficult to detect. So that's where the problem comes in. One is, yes, bias, second is deep fake. So this would make things pretty more complicated as we go along. But yes, the CTO and the CISO also have to use these tools to combat this sort of attacks from happening.
Thank you so much. A lot of providers are aware about these challenges, and I believe the larger the footprint, the better the ability to deal with these issues. And having been part of one such organization, I know that a lot of work is being done in this product, in their landscape, to keep it free from challenges and biases. We would like to open the floor for questions to all of you, but one final, what do we call it, rapid fire round that we had planned for. So, CISOs, password on-prem, on cloud, or no password? On the spot.
Right, I mean, so as I mentioned actually, so federated is a better one, but if it is not done, then you have to keep it with yourself.
So that's
Don't
conservative.
trust.
Jagannath, what's your choice? Throw it in the cloud?
See, we have been discussing it is passwordless, either in cloud or passwordless.
Okay, no password. All right, that I agree with that approach. Password characters 10, 12, 13 or more, and how long? 6 months, 9 months, no expiry.
Sri just mentioned, as per NIST guidelines, they have mentioned it should be minimum 12 characters.
DOD is 13.
No, you can, 90 days you can keep it, there is no issue. Earlier there was 30 days password change was happening, but that culture has changed slowly.
Okay, 90 days?
It is 90 days, people preparing.
Okay. Sorry? Yes, I like it. I like it. So throw it in the cloud, don't expire, keep it passwordless. Okay,
But
good.
all machine to machine, it should not get expired actually. Otherwise, your machine to machine, it should be never expiring.
Yeah, I think it's all about understanding the risk and taking your risk appetite to a level of what your technology is supporting. Okay, a question to Siddharth: when will we see a IAM silver bullet, which does everything from directory, authentication, authorization, and governance?
It's already here, right? But what I would like to see it beyond just one Cosmos and people adopting. So what I would like to see is a verified, reusable, or interoperable identity. I think that to me is the Zen stage.
Okay, all right. So with that, we are done with whatever we wanted to put out through our preparation. Now it's open to you. I don't know how long they'll allow the question answer session. We have Shaurya there, but feel free to go on till Shaurya stops you. Questions, please.
Question to you, Sid. So basically, you mentioned about creating the identity before the entire game starts. Is there any plan, you being an OEM of the product, is there any plan to leverage the national identity program in different countries so that you don't have to do that, leverage on that, and then all you have to play with is authorization and application publishing? So
You said national identity.
programs in
Leveraging
different
the
countries.
national identity program.
Correct. It's a great question. We do that in our workflow already, or in general as a best practices that should be used. But let's understand one thing, right? National level identity is a fiduciary duty of the government that they need to provide to the citizens. What we are talking about is enterprise or B2B or B2B2C kind of requirements, right? When it comes to that, the use cases vary, right? And what I mean by that is at the end of the day, if you want to open a bank account with a bank account, you need to undergo a KYC. That KYC includes government national ID cards. It includes verification of your address. When we talk about a verified identity is that I will take a government issued credential, not one, two maybe, as per the NIST standard, and I will establish an identity to or link the real world identity to the digital identity, right? What we are talking about is in a digital era, how do I think just beyond a user ID and password? So I leverage government issued credentials, right, which is a real world identity. That's how we prove who we are when we go to the airport, right? So we link the real world identity through government issued credentials and link it to your digital identity, which means today, then you become a verified digital identity.
Absolutely. So that's what I mean. I think since the national ID programs are they're exposing their APIs, they're letting you connect. They have KYC and authentication services which you can leverage. And obviously, you need a different ID in the cyber world or in the digital world so that your real identity is not exploited. Which I think, for example, if I take Aadhaar UIDI. They started with usage of the real Aadhaar number and then the virtual identities and then masking of Aadhaar and so on and so forth. So we do understand that identity, while it is very useful, it also has to be kept within the realm of privacy and create. But the only thing that I wanted to talk about was convenience, because I think both the CISOs, they stressed on the fact that while we build our systems to be more robust, more agile, more resilient to the cyber attacks, at the same time we have to ensure that the convenience is not compromised.
Yes.
And if we try to bring in these kind of solutions where no, use your biometric, you establish your user identity, you get a cyber or a digital identity, and then there should be federation so that I should not have a Google Authenticator full of various different things. So I
100%.
think that's to me is the vision that we probably should have in our mind.
That is exactly what we're doing. That's what I'm saying, right? You use the government credential, you link it to your digital identity. Now, every time you log in, I don't need to know your 12-digit or a 16-digit unique government ID or your passport number or your date of birth. All I need to know to establish the trust is that you're a verified identity. Once I have indicated that you're a verified identity, I will then just use your biometric on an ongoing basis for continuous verification. So it's a one-time process. So that's where the convenience piece comes in, that I've verified you once, and now you can go and do whatever you want and access any application you want.
Can I just button here? So you remember a time when B2B used to be creating partner IDs in your AD? That time is gone. We are now happily federating with the world outside and not paying the Azure AD or whatever licensing for it, right? We're leveraging, I have these many IDs internally, but my 20 partners can come in without me maintaining their AD because I trust their ADs.
Yeah.
I think the time has come for now to trust other directories beyond enterprise directories like government ID systems because they are robust and they're sometimes way ahead of us in that.
Exactly, that's the point.
I think that mainstream time has come. We haven't, enterprises haven't taken to it. I think some people are pushing it hard and I think the time will come for that for sure.
Yeah. I have another question. Sorry. If
Sure. Any other questions? Yeah. Some mic there, please.
For the certain SaaS applications and all, we already have seen this domain-based trust, etc. Right? So it's already happening, but then between the trusted entities. So
Why don't you go with your second question you had? Maybe you missed the little bit of audience poll we had on the 3 pillars of zero trust: device, network, and identity. We require all 3 to act in consonance, creating a federation between themselves.
consortiums, right? There people will be coming together and doing it. So what is the trend that you witness? Do you see that there's some bit of reality to this?
Question is to me.
Yeah.
Right. Very simply put, zero trust to me, eventually the end objective is to establish trust.
Yes.
Right. I would be very worried if that kind of a statement was made that only 5 companies, then we all need to start saving when that happens, because I think they're going to charge us where I don't think we'll be
Yeah.
left with anything with only security budget to allocate, right? I think each of the 3 pillars by itself are very, very large. Right, we've been part of identity and access management industry for the last 20 years, since pretty much the inception. Yet, I don't think we are there, right? To be able to do justice and say that I claim to do all 3, I think it's a humongous ask,
Absolutely.
right? I think we all need to be true to ourselves. Either as professionals, we can claim to be SMEs in a subject. You may have some good knowledge about other things, right? But if you claim to be the king of all, right? So, to be honest, my perspective is that I don't think that's possible.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we bring our panel to a close. Our time is up. Thank you for being a patient audience, and thank you, panelists, for being here.
I think we should just close that, right? We have a 1 minute because the mic wasn't working that time.
Are you still there? Okay, go ahead with
Yeah,
your
yeah, he's
question.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a question primarily to the CISOs, right? So one of the challenges that I've seen as part of large organizations is not the identity, it's not the joining and leaving, but also when people move within the organizations, right? So how do you think that's going to change, and how do you make that more efficient, right? A lot of the authorization actually changes when you move the roles in an organization. So how are the CISOs kind of managing that, and how do you make that efficient?
So this is what actually I've been trying to solve in the organization, because the SOX compliance is actually, like zero trust, whatever we talk about, the identity is still fundamental. And if you look at the SOX compliance doesn't talk about your antivirus or anything. It talks about your identity, your change management, etc. Right? It's about identity governance, right? Or role-based access control, that a person should not get excessive access and his access is timely revoked, right? And when the person is actually moving from one department to other department, his access gets tested, that whether he requires the continued access or not. In IBM word, actually we call it a QEV-CBN, continued quarterly employee verification and continued business need, right? So right, definitely the products solve to an extent, but it's about the intention, right? For example, when an employee leaves the organization, you will disable his access on the last working day. But what if the partner leaves the organization? When do you come to know about it? Right? So it's about how you define your processes and how you fine tune it, right? And how do you set the windows, right? So the employee from joining till leaving, actually employee access governance. So then that's why I don't want to be confused with identification and access governance. Both are actually 2 different things. While identity is important, identification, right, to accurately identify the person, but access governance is very critical for the organization to prevent any kind of unauthorized access. And yeah, so right.
Okay, let's keep
I don't know.
talking.
I can't fully answer this, but yeah, it's one's has to experience their own pain. So
Let's talk over tea. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear speakers, for the insightful session, and I'm really grateful that you are here. I would request the audience to please be seated. The next session will start immediately, and I request the photographer to please stay. We'll be giving valued goodies to our esteemed speakers, so just please hand over the